It was 11:51 at night. My phone screen lit up the dark room. A text from my mother, Jennifer. Exciting news. After a long talk, we've decided Michael and Sarah will be moving into your new lake house. It's the perfect, safe place for the baby. It's final. I stared at the words. We've decided. Before I could even process the violation, a second text pinged. My father, David. This is a good alignment of family resources, Olivia. We'll bring their things this Friday. Be useful. They weren't asking. They were announcing an annexation. I didn't cry. I didn't text back, "Are you insane?" My $120,000 bonus, the one I'd earned from living on black coffee and 60-hour work weeks for a solid year, wasn't just money. It was an escape hatch, and they were trying to pry it open. I sat there in the dark of my city condo, the 2 text messages glowing like toxic waste. My reaction wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger, not yet. It was cold. It was the click of a switch. The daughter part of my brain shut down and the financial analyst part took over. This wasn't a family dispute. It was a hostile takeover. I opened my laptop. The screen was bright. I made a new encrypted folder. I named it Asset Defense. I went to my texts and sent a new one not to them, but to the only person who had ever really seen me. "Hi, Grandma Mary. It's starting." Her reply came back in less than 10 seconds. "Always, kiddo. Burn them to the ground." A small, cold smile touched my lips. My fingers were steady as I went to my contacts and dialed. It was after midnight, but I didn't care. "Jessica Thorne, please," I said to the answering service. "Tell her it's Olivia Reed. It's an emergency." You're probably wondering why I didn't just hang up and block them, why I went straight to a lawyer. To understand that, you have to understand the why. You have to understand that I wasn't just their daughter. I was their silent investor. For my entire adult life, I had been the invisible, unpaid financial advisor for Family Incorporated. My older brother Michael was the charming entrepreneur. He was the golden child, the one with all the potential. He created messes. I cleaned them up. It was our family's central dynamic. And I, with my good job and my quiet competence, was the resource that made it all possible. On my laptop, in another locked folder, was a file named readfamilybudget.xlsx. It wasn't just a spreadsheet. It was a map of their mistakes and my solutions. 2 years ago, when my father David was on the verge of foreclosure after a bad investment, I was the one who built the repayment plan. I was the one who showed him how to restructure his debt. I was the one who loaned them the $5,000 to cover the property taxes money I never saw again. When Michael decided he was going to be a business consultant, I was the one who paid the $2,500 for his professional certifications. He never even took the final exam. The receipt was still stapled to a note in my desk drawer. Every holiday, every birthday, I wasn't just Olivia. I was the resource, the useful one, the one who could just handle the logistics, the bills, the messy details of their lives. This lake house, this was the first thing I had ever done that wasn't for them. It was the first thing I had ever bought for myself. I'd used that $120,000 bonus, the first real win of my life, to buy a small glass and cedar cabin on Blue Heron Lake. I bought it in secret. I put it under an LLC. It was supposed to be my fortress, my quiet place. And in the space of 2 text messages, they had declared it a new wing of the Michael Reed Charity Ward. They hadn't just overstepped. They had confirmed what I'd always suspected. My success wasn't mine. My money wasn't mine. In their eyes, I wasn't even mine. I was just a family resource, and I was being reallocated. My phone rang. My lawyer, Jessica Thorne. "Olivia," she said, her voice instantly alert. "What's the emergency?" "They're trying to take my house," I said, and I forwarded her the texts. That night, as I was waiting for Jessica, my lawyer to call back, the why kept replaying in my head. Why was I so cold? Why was my first move to call a lawyer not to cry? It's because this wasn't the first time. It was just the loudest time. The real origin wound, the one that defined my role in the family, happened years ago. I was in college my junior year. I'd just won the Harrison Grant for Applied Analytics. It was a real prestigious scholarship. $2,500. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was validation. It was the first time in my life that a group of strangers had looked at my work, my mind, and said, "This is valuable." I was so proud I booked a flight home to surprise my family. I remember walking from the bus stop, the scholarship certificate in a cardboard tube in my backpack. I got to the house. It was dark, not just evening dark. It was empty. A cold, hollow, no one's been here for days kind of empty. I called my mom, Jennifer, confused. "Hey, I'm home. I'm on the porch. Where is everyone?" Her voice when she answered was so breezy, so light. I can still hear it. "Oh, honey, oh, you're home. You should have told us. We totally forgot you were coming. Oh, it was a totally spontaneous trip. We decided to surprise Michael. We're in Hawaii for his engagement." Hawaii. An international trip. Just like that. I felt so small. So stupid. A scheduling error. I spent the next 4 days of my break alone in that big empty house eating cereal out of the box and watching old movies. The silence of the house felt like a judgment. I flew back to school without seeing a single one of them. A month later, I was visiting my Grandma Mary. She was bustling around her kitchen, making tea, complaining about the neighbors. And on her fridge, stuck under a tacky plastic magnet. I saw it. A photo. The entire family. My father, David. My mother, Jennifer. My brother, Michael, and his new fiancée, Sarah. They were all beaming. They were on the front porch of the family home. Michael was holding a champagne bottle. Sarah was wearing a future Mrs. Reed sash across her chest. Grandma Mary still used an old film camera back then, the kind that printed the date in the corner. The date on the photo was the exact Saturday they were supposedly in Hawaii. They hadn't forgotten me. They hadn't been in Hawaii. They had been right there 45 minutes from my dorm. They had manufactured an elaborate international lie to actively exclude me from my own brother's engagement party. My $2,500 scholarship, my moment of academic pride, was so insignificant that they faked a trip to another continent just so they wouldn't have to acknowledge it alongside Michael's big news. That was the day the daughter part of me really died. That was the day I realized it wasn't neglect. It was policy. I wasn't a person. I was an accessory to be put away when I didn't match the main outfit. That was the origin wound. That was the why. My phone rang, pulling me from the memory. It was her, my mother. I let it ring twice. I took a breath, the cold gray concrete of my condo wall feeling like the only solid thing in the world. I pressed accept. "Hello?" My voice was flat. Instantly the sound of sobbing. Not real grief. This was performative grief. This was the sound of a tool being used. Olivia, how could you? I don't even know who you are anymore." My analyst brain kicked in. I was watching a hostile negotiation tactic. "Mom, I'm not sure what you mean. I bought a house." She cut me off and the tears vanished, replaced by a sharp, shrieking anger. "Don't you dare play dumb with me. Your father is a wreck. We're your family and you're being so cold." I tried one last time. I tried to use logic. "Mom, you didn't ask me. You told me. You sent me a text at 11:51 at night saying it's final. You don't get to annex my private property and then get upset when I lock the door." "Selfish," she shrieked, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. "That's what this is. You have no idea what's going on. Your brother is losing everything." And there it was, the real script. "His business failed," she cried. "They're losing their condo. He has a baby on the way. Sarah is a mess. How can you have this huge lake house all to yourself and not share what is wrong with you?" I just stood there listening. It was all so clear. This wasn't about a visit. This wasn't about family. This was a financial crisis. Michael, the golden child, had failed again, and I, the family resource, was being called in to absorb the loss. My $120,000 bonus wasn't a celebration for them. It was just a new line of credit they felt entitled to. My house wasn't a home. It was a holding asset, a lifeboat. And they were furious I was refusing to let them on. The woman crying on the phone was the same woman who faked a trip to Hawaii. The lie hadn't changed, only the stakes. She wasn't sad that I was setting a boundary. She was furious that I was denying a resource. And in that second, I realized that logic was useless. Arguing was useless. My feelings were irrelevant. I was trying to have a conversation with a person, but I was on the line with a corporate raider. "Mom," I said, and my voice was so cold it surprised even me. All the warmth was gone. "There is nothing to discuss. The house is not available." "You are destroying this family," she screamed. "You are breaking your father's heart. You are—" I hung up. The silence in my condo after I hung up was absolute. It lasted exactly 15 seconds. Then my phone lying on the kitchen counter began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It buzzed across the granite with a low, angry hum. It was the Reed Family Updates group chat. I didn't have to look, but I did. My father, David. "Olivia, your mother is a wreck. You have created a huge mess. You've been selfish and disrespectful. Call me immediately." A mess. My boundary was a mess. Then my brother Michael. The golden child himself. Wow. Just wow. After everything Dad's done for you, this is how you act. You're not the person I thought you were. You'd rather have an empty house than help your own family. Unbelievable. I stared at the words. After everything Dad's done for me. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I was the one who had saved his house from foreclosure. I was the one who paid for Michael's fantasy certifications. The gray rock technique I had tried to use on my mother, that detached, unemotional wall, it was the right move. But it wasn't enough. They were escalating. They were moving from emotional blackmail to character assassination. This confirmed it. There was nothing left to save. I wasn't their daughter. I was a delinquent asset, and they were trying to collect. The next morning, I was in the downtown tower. The office of Jessica Thorne was on the 42nd floor. It was all glass steel and shades of gray. There were no family photos, no live laugh love signs. There was a single dramatic black and white photo of a stone cliff against a stormy sea. It was an office built for one-purpose warfare. Jessica herself was sharp precise and wore a steel gray blazer that matched the furniture. She gestured to a chair. "So," she said, not even bothering with small talk. "The emotional assault failed. They'll pivot to coercion next." I just nodded and slid my phone across the polished desk, the group chat still open. She read the text from David and Michael. Her expression didn't change. She just nodded slowly. "Predictable. The classic pincer movement. Your father attacks your character. Your brother attacks your gratitude. It's all designed to make you feel guilty and small." She pushed the phone back. "But they made a mistake. They put it in writing. And you, Olivia, did something brilliant." "I did. You created Blue Heron Properties, LLC. You didn't just buy a house. You created a fortress." She leaned forward, and this is where my education really began. This was the corporate shield strategy. "Listen to me," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "They aren't fighting Olivia Reed, their daughter. You need to get that person out of your head. They are fighting Blue Heron Properties, LLC, a legal entity. You can't emotionally blackmail a corporation. You can't guilt-trip an LLC. You can't make an LLC feel selfish for protecting its assets." It was like a light went on. All the years I'd spent as an analyst, all the structures and legal firewalls I'd built for clients. I just needed to build one for myself. Jessica continued. "This LLC is the smartest thing you ever did. It's your shield. It's your armor. It's your entire defense. From this moment on, you do not speak. You do not text. You do not answer their calls. The LLC speaks for you." "What does it say?" I asked. A thin, cold smile touched her lips. "It says no, and it says it with the full backing of the law." I watched as she drafted the first salvo. It wasn't an emotional email. It was a formal cease and desist letter. One for David, one for Jennifer, one for Michael. The language was beautiful. It was cold. It was factual. It was legal. It stated that Blue Heron Properties LLC, the sole owner of the property at Blue Heron Lake, did not recognize any tenancy, verbal or implied. It stated that their presence on the property was not welcome. It formally notified them that they were barred from the property and that any attempt to access it to park on its driveway or to step on its land would be considered criminal trespass. It cited the state statute. This, Jessica said, printing 3 copies on heavy bond paper, is the first shot. We're sending them via certified mail, signature required, no more texts, no more phone calls. From now on, we only create a paper trail. I signed the letters not as Olivia, but as Olivia Reed, Managing Member, Blue Heron Properties, LLC. Walking out of that office, I felt different. The knot of guilt and anxiety that had lived in my stomach for 20 years was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They wanted to treat this like a business. They wanted to talk about aligning resources and utility. Okay, let's talk business. The silence that followed the certified letters was loud. It was the sound of a predator regrouping. I knew it wasn't over. I spent the next few days working my phone on my desk like a sleeping explosive. I was right. A few days later, Jessica called. Her voice wasn't the crisp, cool lawyer voice I'd come to rely on. It was something else. It was grim. "Olivia," she said, "I'm glad you're sitting down. It's worse than we thought." I felt a jolt of cold adrenaline. "What is it? Did they threaten to sue me? Did they show up at the house?" "No," Jessica said, her voice tight. "It's not about what they will do. It's about what they've already done. This isn't just a family dispute over a place to live. Olivia, this is criminal." My throat went dry. "What are you talking about?" "I ran a full background check on your brother's LLC and your father's finances just to see what we were really dealing with." She took a breath. Michael's failed business wasn't small. He defaulted on a massive commercial loan. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I just listened, my blood turning to ice water. And she continued, "Your father, David, co-signed it." Oh my God. So what does that mean? It means the bank is seizing their assets, all of them. I heard her click a few keys. "Olivia, the bank is foreclosing on their family home. The house you grew up in, the foreclosure notice was filed 3 days ago." The puzzle pieces didn't just click. They slammed into place with the force of a car crash. The hysterical, performative crying from my mother. The shrieking about Michael losing everything. My father's desperate, angry texts about me creating a mess. They weren't just being dramatic. They were literally losing everything. And they had looked at my new, clean, unencumbered asset my lake house purchased with my own bonus and decided it was theirs. It wasn't an option. It was the only option. It was their lifeboat. And they were furious I was refusing to let them on. "They're desperate," I whispered, staring at my condo wall. "They're criminals," Jessica corrected. "It gets worse. This is the part that changes everything. I'm emailing you a document right now. You need to see this." My inbox pinged. The file was a single PDF. "What am I looking at?" I asked, opening it. "That," Jessica said, her voice turning to steel, "is a filing from the bankruptcy court. They filed for Chapter 7 last week, and that document is part of their list of assets and liabilities." I scanned the document. It was titled Family Tenancy Agreement. It looked like something Michael had typed up in Microsoft Word. It was simple, full of typos, and it granted Michael Reed and Sarah Reed indefinite rent-free residence at the property on Blue Heron Lake. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. They filed this with the court." "Look at the last page," Jessica said. I scrolled down, and there it was. At the bottom, in the signature line for LLC Managing Member, was my name. Olivia Reed. It was a clumsy, looping, unfamiliar signature. It looked nothing like my own. "That's not my signature," I said. My voice was a whisper. "I know," Jessica said. "It's a forgery, a clumsy, idiotic felony-level forgery." I stared at the screen. I stared at the name that was mine, but wasn't mine. The Hawaii lie was cruel. The emotional blackmail was pathetic. But this was a federal crime. I don't understand, I said, my mind racing. Why would they do this? It's a classic move by a desperate debtor. Jessica explained, her voice quick and analytical. They're trying to protect the asset. Not for you, but for them. By creating a fake, pre-dated lease agreement, they're trying to tell the bank and the creditors that the lake house is occupied and can't be seized. They're trying to squat. They are actively, criminally trying to use your clean asset to cover their dirty debt. I leaned back in my chair. They hadn't just tried to break my boundary, they had tried to erase me as the owner. They were trying to replace Olivia Reed, managing member, with a puppet who would sign her name and give them whatever they wanted. I thought of my mother's tears, my father's anger, Michael's entitled texts. It was all a performance, a distraction. While I was dealing with the emotional assault, they were committing fraud. They're done. I said, my voice no longer a whisper. It was a promise. Yes, Jessica agreed. They are, and now we go on the offense. It was New Year's Eve. The lake house, my fortress, wasn't dark and silent. It was full of warm light. It was full of the sound of laughter. I wasn't alone. I was with my chosen family. My friend Emily was arguing with Jacob over the rules of a board game, and Hannah was trying to mediate while laughing so hard she was crying. This was my new tradition. No useful tasks. No walking on eggshells. Just Chilean bowls, a fire in the hearth, and the sound of people who genuinely liked me. We were in the middle of a loud, ridiculous debate about whether syzygy was a real word when my phone on the table buzzed. Not a text, a notification. Motion detected driveway. The laughter in the room didn't die, but I went still. Emily saw my face. Olivia, what's up? Company, I said. Jacob and Hannah went quiet. They knew the whole story. They were my social shields. Jacob, ever the practical one, quietly picked up his phone, angled it toward the front door, and pressed record. Emily did the same. The crunch of gravel under heavy tires was audible now. Headlights cut sharp white slashes across the glass wall. It wasn't one car, it was two. Two large, dark SUVs rolling up to my house like a funeral procession. Doors slammed. 5 distinct angry thuds in the cold night air. I stood up. I saw them through the glass. My father David, my mother Jennifer pulling her coat tight, my brother Michael vibrating with rage, and his wife Sarah looking very pregnant, very pale, and very, very stressed. And a fifth person, a man I'd never seen in an expensive suit carrying a polished leather briefcase. He looked like a vulture who had just passed the bar exam. There was no polite knock. My father David pounded on the solid wood door. Thump, 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 a demand for entry. My friends were silent, watching me, their phones up. I nodded at them. I walked to the door and opened it. The cold air rushed in. They were all standing there, a little gang of financial ruin. And they were all visibly shocked. They had expected to find me alone, depressed, defeated. They had not expected a room full of my smiling, silent friends all holding up cell phones. My mother faltered, her prearranged, worried mother face collapsing into confusion. The man in the suit, the vulture, stepped forward. He was all smooth, practiced calm. Ms. Olivia Reed, he asked. Yes. My name is Mr. Harrison, he said. I'm the bankruptcy counsel for your parents. We're here tonight to mediate a resolution to this housing misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, I said, my voice loud and clear enough for every phone to pick it up. Ms. Reed, he said, sighing like I was a difficult child. We have a filed tenancy agreement granting Mr. Michael Reed residence here. It's a done deal. We are simply here to finalize. I cut him off. My voice was as sharp and cold as the night air. You mean the forged one? The silence that fell on the porch was absolute. Mr. Harrison's professional smile didn't just twitch, it died. My father went ashen. I'm not the person you need to talk to, I said. And from the shadows of my own hallway, a uniformed deputy sheriff stepped forward into the porch light. Jessica had prearranged it. A civil standby. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. The deputy didn't look at me. He looked right at Mr. Harrison. Sir, he said, his voice booming. Are you aware that this document you're referencing has been filed with a federal court? Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, was suddenly sweating in the freezing air. It was filed on behalf of my clients. And are you aware, the deputy continued, that the managing member of the LLC, Ms. Reed, has filed a formal complaint, complete with a forensics report stating that her signature is a forgery that makes this document evidence in a criminal fraud investigation. The secondary twist, the real checkmate, was beautiful. Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, immediately flipped. He took a physical step away from my family, his hands up. I was misled by my clients, he stammered, looking at the deputy. They assured me this document was valid. I had no knowledge of any forgery. I'm dropping them as of this moment. I am done. He grabbed his briefcase and practically ran back to his SUV. The entire family unit imploded right there on my porch. Michael lunged forward, his face purple. You bitch! You can't do this! The deputy put a hand on his chest. Sir, I'd step back. My mother, Jennifer, finally broke. The performance was over. This was raw, desperate panic. Olivia, please, she sobbed, rushing forward. You don't understand. We're losing everything. The house is gone. Please, we're your family. She grabbed my arm. I looked at her, at this weeping, desperate woman, and as she begged, I looked past her at my brother's enraged, entitled face. And in that instant, I flashed back. I wasn't on my porch. I was on the porch of the old house alone, holding my scholarship certificate. I was staring at a photo of them all smiling, having a party without me on the day they told me they were in Hawaii. The memory was so clear, so sharp, it incinerated every last molecule of guilt in my body. I pulled my arm away from her. And then the final, beautiful collapse. Sarah, my sister-in-law, who had been silent this whole time, just staring her eyes wide with horror. She looked at her husband, Michael. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut through the night. You forged her name. Michael looked at her, stunned. Sarah, stay out of this. You forged her name, she repeated, and her voice cracked with tears of rage and humiliation. You told me this was all a misunderstanding. You told me she was just being difficult. You committed a crime. You were going to have me move our baby into a house you stole. Sarah, get in the car, my father yelled. No, she screamed. I'm done, Michael. I am not having my baby with a criminal. She turned sobbing and stumbled back to the SUV, yanking the door open and slamming it shut. It was over, checkmate. My father was deflated. My mother was silent, staring at the car. Michael was just broken. The deputy gestured to the driveway. Folks, he said, the show's over. You're trespassing. Leave now. Wordlessly, they turned. The three of them. They got into their car, the one without Sarah, and backed down the gravel drive. I watched their taillights disappear. I turned, looked at my friends, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. I stepped back inside, closed my solid wood door, and turned the deadbolt. The heavy thunk was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The deputy stayed for another 10 minutes just to ensure they were truly gone. My friends were quiet, the adrenaline draining from the room. Emily was the first to speak. Olivia, holy, Jacob just shook his head, his phone still in his hand. I got it all, Liv, every single word. I nodded. I felt strangely calm. I went to the kitchen and started making hot chocolate, my hands perfectly steady. The show was over. The war was won. The next few days were a blur of silence. My family was gone, vanished. The legal machine, however, was just getting started. Jessica called me a week later. It's done, she said. What's done? The bankruptcy court held an emergency hearing. The trustee reviewed our filing, the forged tenancy agreement, the deputy's report, and the video your friends took. She paused. The court sanctioned David and Michael for felony fraud. Their entire bankruptcy case was thrown out. I sat down. What does that mean? It means they lose everything, Jessica said, and for the first time I heard a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. The bank gets the house. The creditors get their cars. They can't discharge their debt. They'll be paying for Michael's business for the rest of their lives. They tried to commit a federal crime, Olivia, and they lost. The lake house was 100% secure. The LLC had held. The fortress was untouched. That afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Grandma Mary. "I just got off the phone with Jessica Thorne," she said. No preamble. "She's a damn shark. I like her." I laughed, a real light sound. "Hi, Nana. Yeah, she's effective." "Effective, kiddo. She's a work of art." There was a clinking sound ice in a glass. "I also got let's call it a hysterical voicemail from your mother. Something about you ruining their lives." My stomach tightened just a little. The old reflex. "And I just wanted you to know," Grandma Mary continued, her voice sharp as glass, "that I'm proud of you. They built that cage for you your entire life, and you just walked out the front door and threw away the key." "Thanks, Nana," I whispered. "Oh, that's not all," she said, her voice breezy. "I was so inspired by all this financial activity, I decided to do some of my own. I updated my will, called my own lawyer. You're the new executrix. Your parents are not. Turns out trying to defraud your own daughter doesn't sit well with the family matriarch. She'd cut them out. Completely. The final financial consequence. Competence was at last being rewarded. The final scene. It wasn't in a courtroom. It wasn't in a lawyer's office. It was a quiet morning a week later at the lake house. I was sitting on my private dock. The water was like glass. I had a steaming mug of coffee in my hand. I opened my laptop. I didn't go to my work email. I went to my old personal drive. I found the file. readfamilybudget.xlsx. I opened it. It was all there. 6 years of my life quantified. The spreadsheet I had built to save their house. The tab for Michael's expenses with the $2,500 certification fee I'd paid still marked in red. The line item for the loan to cover their property taxes. It was the ledger of my old life. The balance sheet of my role as the family resource. I stared at the numbers. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just done. This wasn't a family album. It was an invoice for a debt that could never be repaid, a debt I was no longer willing to carry. My hand moved to the trackpad. I moved the cursor over the file name. I didn't hesitate. I clicked delete. A small box popped up. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete this file?" I clicked yes. I went to the trash bin. I clicked empty trash. It was gone. The screen was clean. I closed the laptop. I picked up my coffee and looked out at the water. For the first time in my entire adult life, I felt no guilt. I felt no obligation. There was no noise in my head. Just peace. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.